Welcome to the Thundercast, your Marshall Athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week. So keep it right here. The Thundercast is on the loose. For years, Marshall fans have been asking, who is the next great wide receiver? In 2026, that may be the wrong question. The better question is, how do you stop all of them? Phil still ranks Marshall's receiving core number one in the Sun Belt, and the herd has enough depth between wide receivers and tight ends to create a true pick your poison passing attack. Today, we're breaking down the deepest and most dangerous receiving core of Marshall's Sun Belt era. Thanks for downloading another episode of the Thundercast. You can follow us on Twitter at Thundercast_pod. Listen to the show anywhere you like to listen to your favorite podcasts. And of course, if you're watching, you have already found the Thundercast YouTube channel. We sure would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel while you're there, like and share the links to the shows, and give us some of those hype points if you got them to spare. Russ, this is one of the top units on the roster this year, and they made a concerted effort to bolster this unit because, man, they retained a ton of talent to have at the disposal of one Carlos Del Rio Wilson. How are you feeling about this unit?
It's my number one unit for Marshall this year. I have said that this has the potential to be like just one of the deepest wide receiver / tight end together receiving core that we have had in a long, long time. Now, I'm not saying like Watts, Davis, Marriott, like the top three might not be the top three we've ever had, but the depth that we have coming in, the newcomers that came in after what we already returned, it's just scary good, and it's not just at wide receiver, it's at tight end too. We are just stacked beyond stacked this year in this room.
It is unbelievable how deep they really go. And if fans haven't dug as deep into it as we have, you're going to learn a lot tonight about what this unit looks like, what it can be, and what we think it will be. We don't want to go all the way back to like Mac era, because sometimes that's just, it's unfair. It was just like a treasure trove of receivers back then. And there have been some really great ones over the years. But the watermark that we tend to compare most modern teams to is that 2014 team. So easily over the last decade, this is probably the deepest, most dangerous from top to bottom that we've seen. This unit is coached by Chansey Stuckey. He's your wide receivers coach. Gunnar Brewer is your tight ends coach. And, of course, Rod Smith will be controlling the offense in year two and is your quarterbacks coach. I mentioned in the lead-in that Phil still ranks this unit first in the Sun Belt. Also get a national nod from the receiving core unit at number 62 nationally. So when you start to filter out all those Power 5 teams, this ranks as one of the top in the G5, G6. And, well, there's no surprise why. They retained a lot of talent, and they went out and got even more talent to make this a really, really dangerous room. I think you have to ask why. Why would we be saying these things right now without at this stage in the game and not having played any football? Why are we saying this is the deepest and most dangerous? And to me, it boils down to a combination of about 3 or 4 things. Number one, it's depth. They are really deep at a lot of positions. There are combinations they can put on the field that you're not going to see a lot, if any, drop off. They have a lot of team speed. We're talking about proven production that is returning. And the offense in which they will operate is also very user friendly when you have a quarterback like Carlos Del Rio Wilson behind center. 6 to 8 deep might sound like a stretch. I don't really think it is. I mean, right off the bat, you can talk about Norton and Tamarez and Payne, and you're already three, and those are three superstar type players, and we haven't even gotten into guys we expect to step up and newcomers to the program. I think a Sunbelt defense, Russ, might be able to limit one or two of these guys on a week-to-week basis, but there is no way there is enough talent across a defense, enough depth across a defense to neutralize every one of these guys for a four-quarter game. There's just no way. There's no way. So do me a favor and let's talk about some of the guys that departed from the program, and then I'll get into some like general statistics to give people some context about what we're getting ready to talk about.
All right. So here's the departed. It's just in wide receiver first. And then I'm going to talk about tight ends and everything. And I'll explain tight end when I get there. Okay. Wide receiver, Brian Robinson, exhausted eligibility. Floyd Lacey, exhausted eligibility. Antonio Harmon, exhausted eligibility. Ben Turner, exhausted eligibility. Jacoby Baldwin, he's a grad transfer, but he hasn't landed anywhere yet, so he's still kind of out there. Xavier Short, exhausted eligibility. Atlee Cowan has departed the wide receiver room, but he just went across the hall and he's in the defensive back room. So that's a position change, but it is still someone that was on the roster as a wide receiver last year that's not in the room this year. Mm-hmm. So that's included. And then KJ Jones, also a transfer, and I have not seen where he landed, if he has. I was getting ready to check that right now because I did not have that down. But to my knowledge, he didn't land anywhere yet. All right, now for tight ends. Rhett McGrew is also a position change. He has left the tight end room, and he is now in the offensive line room, and that's just a position change. So we had two that are no longer that we're going to be talking about today, but they're still on the team. They're in different roles.
Great. So there, you can see that it was a lot of roster spots vacated from this room. But along with that, not a ton of production across all of those roster spots.
Yeah, other than Floyd Lacey, I mean, there's not a ton there.
Yeah, I think it's a combined 10, 13, maybe 16 or 17 catches among the rest of the guys for maybe right at 100 and 120 yards for everybody. No touchdowns between the rest of them. Floyd Lacey was, I mean, the most electric guy on the field in a number of capacities on the ground and through the air, but he definitely the leading receiver. It hurt to lose a guy like that, but when you run out of eligibility, you're out of eligibility.
And just because I'm a perfectionist, KD, I just found KJ Jones is now at Southern Utah.
Okay, good. Then he did find a landing spot, so we wish him the best, obviously. So let's talk about some of those 2025 passing/receiving numbers, just to give you some context. 2,495 yards passing last year, 18 touchdowns. Wide receiver/tight end receptions, collectively, 189 of those across the board. Receiving yards across the entire receiving core, 2,221 of those. And then 16 of the 18 touchdowns went to a wide receiver or a tight end. So it's very, very, very pass-heavy production-wise to the receiving core, as you would expect. Running backs contribute a little bit in yardage and touchdowns, but primarily it's wide receivers and tight ends. And of that number last year, the 2,221 yards that went to wide receivers and tight ends, 769 of those went to Floyd Lacey. So definitely the biggest impact player. But there is some returning production. DeAndre Tamarez returns. 32 catches, 395 yards, a couple of touchdowns. Toby Payne, of course, returns with returning production, 37 catches, 393 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And Norton, 27 for 363 and 5 touchdowns. And even XTB, 9 catches for 129 yards. So that's what we were talking about. A lot of players retained. I want you to kick it on down the list. Give me a full list of everybody that returns.
And again, I'm going to do wide receivers first, tight ends separately, and we're going in number order. Pay attention to these if you're a number watcher for out on the field. There were a myriad of number changes, and you're going to want to familiarize yourself with those numbers instead of saying, for instance, hey, where's Adrian Norton? I'm looking around for 13 out there, and that's not him. There's a number change. All right, so number 0, DeAndre Tamarez, 5'11", 170, same exact weight that he was last year. Number 2 now, Adrian Norton, 6 foot even, 199. Last year was 204. Number 5 now, Xavion Turner Bradshaw, 5'10", 163, right around where he was at 165 last year. Now number 8, Sharon White Deuce Jr., 5'8", 156. He was 160 last year. Number 16, Jalen Abercrombie, Spring Valley guy, 5'11", 176, down from 187 last year. I feel like that's one of those. He was a true freshman last year. Now he's in this Dwight Galt program, probably a lot leaner, faster, and I wouldn't. It wouldn't be a stretch for me to think that he has also put on some muscle at that 176, even though he's dropped 11 pounds. I would imagine that he is bigger, faster, stronger than he was last year. Now number 18, Justin Haggerty, 5'9", 169. He was 166 last year. Now number 19, Tony Martin, 5'11", 171, same as last year. And then 84, Nico Weedman, 6'2", 202, up 7 pounds from 195 last year. Moving over to the tight end, of course, 81, Toby Payne, 6'4", 235, right around the 237 he was last year. Tracy Stevens has seen a huge bump in his weight and size, 85. Tracy Stevens, 6'4", 264 now. He was 239 last year. More on that later. Number 80, Sean Rouse. Remember, last year he switched over from being on the line to being a tight end. 6'3", 246. He was 247 last year. And then 86, Brandon Hepworth, 6'4", 222, 10 pounds down from last year at 232.
Wow, that's a lot of movement, a lot of number changes, and a lot of retooling in the weight room also.
Yeah, the body composition factor for a couple of these players, I mean, they should look drastically different than what they did last year.
Now, there's one player that I didn't catch. I didn't catch you say if you had him. We need to mention Chase Massey also returns, the redshirt sophomore. Will be 6'2", 175, another Winfield in-state guy.
There is a reason you didn't hear that. I have him in the newcomers because he switched positions from last year, so that's why I had him down there.
Okay, so
let's do the newcomers?
No, we'll give it a second because I got some notes on. We need to talk about some of these guys, just some notes on the returners, right? I mean, obviously we're going to talk about some of this stuff and strengths and weaknesses, but this is the first time where we've talked about a position group that returns so much production. So we need to give a little bit more context, right? I mean, we're going to do our projected starters and things here in a minute, but when you get to, I'm just going to highlight 4 guys in particular, and it's Norton, Tamarez, Payne, and Turner Bradshaw. The fact that they were able to retain all of these guys, I think, says something about this offense. I think it says something about the quarterback and the offensive line and the run game as a whole, like what this offense could be. And you talk about this being your number 1 position for the Herd this year. It's hard for me to look anywhere else as well, because even though you're returning the preseason Sunbelt Player of the Year in Carlos Del Rio Wilson, that's one guy, and this is a massive unit that's going to be very, very integral into the successes or failures of Marshall this season.
Yeah, let me speak on that briefly. You're a twisted ankle, a hamstring pull, or anything from your preseason Sun Belt Conference Offensive Player of the Year being off the field for a little while. If you have a similar injury in this wide receiver or tight end room, it's just next man up because it's so deep. So to me, that is why it is the number one, and most of it is the depth with what's returning. But they also just freaking loaded up afterwards. I mean, they had all this returning production, and they said, let's add to that, let's double what we have right now. I just feel that's what they've done.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to wait until we talk projected starters to give you some of my notes that I have on it. I just think it fits better there. So if you would like to talk newcomers or position changes or whatever you have in that mix, that's fine. Let's do that.
All right, so newcomers, it's going to be wide receivers. There are no newcomers in tight end. So number 3, Chris Culliver, 6'1", 194, comes to us from North Carolina. Number 9, Christian Hamilton, 5'11", 181, comes to us from WVU. Number 20, Owen Sweeney, 6'3", 195, from VMI. Number 15, Josiah McLaurin, 6'1", 188 from Maryland. Now, you remember, you and I talked about him as a running back when we did that room and figured that he would be there a lot. I don't think that there is any reason that still won't come to pass, but he is listed solely as a wide receiver. But so was Floyd Lacey. So you know what I mean? Like we have plenty of people that are going to be listed and one thing, and that does not define them on the football field where they're going to be. So right now he's listed as wide receiver, but that's just for any listener, any viewer wondering, now, wait a minute, these guys talked about him in this, which is it? He's listed as a wide receiver. And this roster just came out probably last week while I was gone, the newest roster update that has him on there. He just was not on there when we were talking about the running back room. All right. Also, number 11, Drew Williams, 6'2", 205, comes to us from St. John's College High School. Number 13, Brennan Chambers, 6'3", 170, comes from Kinston High School. 24, Aiden Burke, 6 foot even, 190 pounds, Mingo Central High School. And then, as you mentioned, with a number change and a position change, number 23, Chris Massey, 6'2", 175. He was 173 last year. He was listed as a quarterback, and then after the spring, he was listed in the defensive backfield. And he and Atlee Cowan basically just swapped positions, is what it looks like, from spring practice this year into what we're going into fall camp. So Chase Massey is now, again, swapping rooms and is in the wide receiver room.
Okay. So, again, now you start to see how, especially through the portal, this room got really deep really quick with production and high upside guys. And the fact that you're bringing up McLaurin again, we talked about this repeatedly, that as soon as there's a roster update, we may know more. But we also talked about him particularly filling a little bit of the role of a Floyd Lacey and being out of the backfield a lot and catching passes in the pass game. So everything we've talked about to this point is still holding true. Let's get a word right now before we move any farther from our presenting sponsors of the 2026 Position Group Breakdown Series. And of course, if you've been following the entire series, you know by now that it is Secure Construction Company. If you are in need of a little bit of a bathroom overhaul or know someone that may need to make their bathroom a little bit safer, maybe you have aging parents or relatives or others that you just know, your first call should always be to Secure Construction Company. They're locally owned and operated and massive, massive Herd fans.
Yeah, let's get a word from them. And while you're listening to this, just remember 14 years running, best in the tri-state, and it is a locally family-owned business.
Hey, Tri-State, do you have an ugly, unsafe shower? Secure Construction can help. People fall every day in showers that are unsafe. Secure Construction can come and give you a free estimate on a new safe shower that will transform your bathroom. Give us a call today to speak with one of our shower experts and get a free estimate on a new, safe shower now. Secure Construction. Home improvement in secure hands.
Again, thanks so much. I'm sorry. Thanks so much to Secure Construction Company for coming aboard this year and helping us present you the 2026 Position Group Breakdown Series.
When you call and get that free estimate, just mention that you heard or saw it on the Thundercast. They are just wanting to see, how many people have come to learn about them from our show.
Yep, we sure do appreciate it if you would help us do that. Now, Russ, let's talk about what do we got left? What are we at? Where are we at? We on
expected starters?
Okay, let's. I don't know how you did this, so I just went with 3 wide receivers and a tight end.
I did too, but I labeled them outside, slot, and tight end. I tried to get creative and do X, Y, Z, and then I thought, that's sometimes particular offenses. So I just put who I expected to be wide, who I expected to be in tight, and then tight end.
Yeah, and now I guess we should also say that this is yet another position group where starter truly means you were in on the first series of the game.
Very first. Yep.
After that, who knows what we're going to be trying to do. But let's kick it off. Who's your wide receiver 1 as you see things right now?
Yeah, I've got Adrian Norton out on the outside. I think that we started to see a lot of the reason we brought him over from the previous stop that he was at, where he had 43 receptions, and then as the season got along, he just started performing how we thought that he would, and really distanced himself between everybody else to be that wide receiver 1.
Yeah, he's my wide receiver number 1 as well right now. The senior, the 6 foot, 199 pounder. Let me run through the numbers again. 27 catches last year, 363 yards, and 5 touchdowns. But it was really the last half of the season that this really started to open your eyes up. And what comes to mind is the contested touchdown. God, I can't remember the game, but it was right at the end of the half. And then the big play against Texas State, to where he kind of rips away from the defender and lunges into the end zone to give the Herd the lead. And that really put him on a major radar for me. That one singular play, it was one of our top 10 plays of the season last year. It may have been our number 1 play of the season last year. There's no questioning that this guy has talent. That you can see why he was somewhat of a coveted entity through the portal cycle a year ago, 2 years ago. And for me, I think it's really hard to start talking about things like breakout and things like that, because we've seen it a little bit. But, man, I think this guy's in for a really special season. Yeah. Who's your wide receiver number 2?
It's also returning talent, and I have him out on the outside. It's Andre Tamarez for me, and I think that it's because of his familiarity with the quarterback and also the where you at on the field with Norton. I feel like that's the returning tandem right now on the outside before we start talking about newcomers coming in to take that position away.
It's the same for me. DeAndre Tamarez, 5'11", 170-pound redshirt senior. So 2 upperclassmen potentially on the outside for the Herd, both returning players that played in this offense with this quarterback last year. Those kind of things cannot be understated in this era of college football. This is why this group particularly is ranked so high. There's so much familiarity with the offense, with everything. The guy throwing you the ball. I mean, and he had numbers coming in out of Western Carolina. If you remember, he was an 8. I don't have the best memory in the world, but I think he was one of the guys that came in that had more receiving production than anybody else that had been on our roster.
Yeah.
So, and then he came out and continued to produce here at Marshall. So he was the second leading receiver behind Floyd Lacey. I mentioned it, 32 catches for 395 yards and a couple of touchdowns. He looked really good in the spring game too. He was catching freaking everything that was within his reach. So it looks like he had a very, very productive offseason, a very, very productive spring session. Who knows what the summer's going to bring, and he's poised to have to be a bona fide weapon across the field from Norton.
In
All
the
right.
slot, I've got Xavion Turner Bradshaw. I feel like we saw a glimpse of that in the opening drive of the spring game. Coach Gibson mentioned him as well as taking that next step. Floyd's gone. And this is one of those where he may step in and be that guy, get him the ball close to the line of scrimmage, but also in an open field where he can make some plays. And I feel like that's what you're going to see a lot of. Give me XTB as a starter, and his production is going to go way up.
The skill set that does so well for him in the kick return game translates to that slot role. And I feel like he will see an increased role in the receiving game as well. I mean, he's kind of, I don't want to say earned it, but he's kind of shown that he can do the things that you want your slot receiver to do. I could not decide, honestly. So I could not decide who I liked more right here. And I get that you lean towards a returning player. I give XTB the nod as well, but I'm going to tell you what, I had a hard time scratching out Christian Hamilton right here in this spot because, man, we saw some really exciting play from him in the spring game. I think he's got a ton of upside. I mean, he feels like the type of guy that's a little too exciting to try to or to keep off of the field. But for cohesion's sake, I give the nod to XTB as well. If there's any question of who your tight end one is, please lay it on me.
It's Toby Payne, of course, and we'll talk so much more about him in strengths, I'm sure. But just right now, we have been blessed at tight end for a long time at Marshall. We have had some really good tight ends, and he's the latest in a long line of those. That is a matchup nightmare. You think of Cody Slate, how much of a matchup nightmare he was. Kind of the same thing here with Toby Payne. It's just there during that one era, Cody Slate was the feature of the offense. And we're not there with Payne. I would love to see that with Payne, but you also need to share the ball around a little bit. And we hope to be putting in more wins in the win column than when Cody was here as well, too. So that plays into it. But Toby Payne by far is my number one tight end.
I mean, he's the best tight end in the conference. If you don't have him penciled in as your tight end one in this offense, you are not watching the same team that we are watching week in and week out. I mean, he was just edged out by Tamarez in the receiving yards category. He had 37 for 393. So second leading receiver on the team from a reception standpoint, and right there with just 2 yards behind Tamarez to be number 2 on the team. Found the end zone 3 times. I've been on record for years now saying that he's criminally underutilized in this offense because we saw, particularly, I think it was Georgia State, that he just caught fire and he had a couple of long catches and a couple of long runs, and the next thing you know, he's over 100 yards, and that's how quickly it happens. But we got into this theme last year watching these games in real time, and you could almost see when it was about to happen. It was right before halftime. They would try to find Payne 3 or 4 times on the last drive before halftime, and he would pile up a few yards, and then that would be it. And then they try to look for him again, maybe later in the game to try to move a chain or here, there, and everywhere. But consistently, I don't think Toby Payne has to be a 10-catch-a-game tight end.
Sure.
But he damn sure needs to be a 10 to 12 target tight end per game because he's just that daggone good. You're talking about a guy also, Russ, that's entering into campus legend territory. Came here, stayed here, could have went many places, and chose to remain right here, like 30 minutes from his hometown, so that the family can still come and watch him. He still wants to finish some business here in Huntington, and you got to respect a guy like that has the options to leave and has had the options for a couple of years and has turned them all down for a couple of years to remain right here in the Kelly Green. He's your number 1 tight end, a first-team all-conference tight end, without a doubt. It will not surprise me when they start putting out these watch lists to have him land on the Mackey Award watch list. I mean, it's going to happen. That 6'4", 235 and a mismatch nightmare. Who else are you going to put there over Payne? How about some heavy contributors?
Yeah, and the same as you said earlier with the starters, and we said that they could be the starter just for whoever played the very first snap of the game. You also have to think of the lineup. What if they come out with four wide and no tight end? One of these guys would be a starter or an empty backfield. So these heavy contributors might be as targeted as who we have as the starters, at least from my perspective and my list. But I'm going to start with Chris Culliver, the guy that comes to us from North Carolina. We talked about him on the special teams episode because he has 2 touchdowns from kick returns. And that is a guy, just like you mentioned with Turner Bradshaw, if you are good at finding the end zone in open field, it doesn't matter if it's special teams or as a wide receiver. So I look for a lot out of him. I look for him to play a lot. So I've got him up there as my heavy contributor, number 1.
I think that's a great spot to have him as well. And you can tell I use this word a lot in just about all of these episodes that these guys have an archetype for a lot of these positions. Wide receiver is a weird one, but they still like to lean, it looks like, towards the slightly shorter, speedier, lighter kind of wideout. They did go out and get themselves an outside threat in the portal. And they brought in a taller receiver from the high school ranks. But Culliver is another one of those that could eat you alive in a slot. I mean, just eat you alive. So in a 4 wide set, if they go 5 wide, for crying out loud, holy moly, there's going to be that should bring defensive coordinators in this conference, like, they should lose sleep over that because of how what a 5 wide set might look like when you're going up against Marshall. This is a great place for Chris Culliver to land. And 6'1", 194-pounder. Limited opportunities in the pass game at North Carolina, but he has, like you said, flashed unbelievable speed and explosiveness, and that will track and play in an offense like this. Great spot to have him as first off the bench, so to speak, in the heavy contributor role. Who you got next?
It's Christian Hamilton, who you've already mentioned, and I put him and Culliver basically 1A, 1B as far as first off the bench, could start any minute. Maybe they get the hot hand. You might see them starting more than the others. But I look to see Hamilton and Culliver both have big years, so I got to have Hamilton in there as a heavy contributor as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I could not really differentiate between he and XTB as who I liked as my slot 1, and I lean towards the returning player. So since I've already sung the praises of Christian Hamilton, I'm just going to toss out the next guy for me, and that is Owen Sweeney, the big guy, the 6'3", 195-pounder that comes in from VMI with over 700 yards receiving last year and 8 touchdowns to lead that team. There's your big outside threat, your big outside downfield guy that should be able to win the majority of those 50-50 balls. That's your fade route guy to me, but everybody couldn't be 5'11" to 6'1". You got to go get somebody that gives you a little bit of a height advantage over some of these taller DBs. And Owen Sweeney's the guy. They liked him. Obviously, I think he had several suitors in the portal cycle. And I think when you look around what Marshall was able to retain and what you're able to sell as an offense, they became really, really attractive and were able to get one of the better FCS receivers to move up and come to Huntington.
Yeah, I do have Sweeney up there as well. He's third on my list. He's the home run hitter. He's the guy that's going to be going over the top. One of the things I liked about him at VMI, they had 2 very, very similar wide receivers stat wise, and Sweeney seemed to just have a little bit more, even though he was probably listed as wide receiver 2. He just seemed to have a little bit more in the tank than what the other guy did, and he had those long receptions, the 50 some here, the 20 some there, those big chunk plays. And I think that you're going to see him doing that at least 4 or 5 times this year, getting behind the defensive backs and finding himself in the end zone on the long pass.
Go ahead and continue with your list since I leapfrogged you.
All right, so I'm going to leave out tight ends for right now, but I have
Okay.
some listed up there already, higher up on the list, but I'll get to them later. I'm going to go with Josiah McLaurin next, and he's the guy coming from Maryland. And again, I still expect him to be in the backfield quite a bit. It would not shock me to see him out here, even though we're not going four wide, having somebody in the slot, him in the backfield, but it's a designed pass to him, even if the target doesn't go his way, that we have him basically in the backfield as a decoy, running a wheel route, running a drag route, something like that, to where he's a wide receiver lined up in the backfield. But he's not just a running back that catches. He's listed as a wide receiver because he's big and he can catch the ball. He's 6'1", 188, and I look for him to do some damage through the air this year.
He's where he falls for me as well. I used this term in one of our defensive breakdown episodes, a chess piece for the defense.
Mhm.
I think Josiah McLaurin turns into an offensive chess piece for Rod Smith. He's a versatile wrinkle in both the run and pass games, and nobody, I think, any one guy is not tasked with filling the role of Floyd Lacey. But
Mhm.
if there is one guy that can do the most to fill the most part of that role, it feels like it's McLaurin because he'll be
Mhm.
that backfield dude and contributing in a pass game. I think the rest of that pass production and run production is just going to kind of come the traditional way with other wide receivers and tight ends and other running backs. So I don't think you're looking at one guy to lead the team in passing and be one of the top rushers on the team as well. If it happens to fall that way, it falls that way. But I don't think that's the plan going in. Who you got next?
It's Deuce White for me, and I could see him going up as far as in that slot role as a starter where Turner Bradshaw is. He has shown unbelievable potential in the spring games, particularly as a true freshman coming in. I mean, when some people had yet to graduate high school, he was there in the 2025 spring game, caught a touchdown. Uh, I think they had an end around reverse to him or a double reverse to him. And it just showed how electric he can be. You and I talked about it. You had me come up with a second punt return guy, and that was it. And he was your guy for that as well. And I think that he is another one of those guys that if you get him the ball in open space, he can take it to the house at any time.
Yeah, and I this is where he falls for. There's a trio of guys right here that I feel like are all going to be able to start to make a name for themselves, and Deuce White is one of those three guys. I mean, good Lord, it's hard to keep speed on the sideline. You know
Mhm.
that's the great equalizer in the game of football is speed. So if you got a guy that is just shifty and explosive, I mean, we've mentioned those words with several of these guys so far, but I like Deuce in the punt return game, and for the same reasons, I like him to slash a slot like crazy, and I think he's going to get his opportunities this year. And I think Herd fans might even get to see these guys, these next three guys, early in the season because you're in that non-conference to give them an
Mhm.
opportunity to earn or show that they earn reps for conference games. But
Mhm.
man, it's just time. It's really just time for Deuce White to hit the field and let Herd fans get a full on display of what he can do. Do you have any more?
Oh, I do. I have three more wide receivers,
Okay.
and then I've got two tight ends that I want to talk about. So next up on the wide receiver, I've got Tony Martin, and it's one of those things that when you have been taught the exact way to run routes, the exact way to get separation, the exact way to maximize your speed, like he has learned from his coach father, Tim Martin, Herd Hall of Famer, Herd legend. I feel like he is one of those guys, and it might be one of those that you're talking about that is ready to take that next leap. Um, he has all the tools, all the intangibles. Coach Gibson mentioned him by name when he was on our show as one of those to look out for. And I think that even though we're not talking about him pushing a starter right now, I do think that you're going to see him get some time and he might earn more and more targets and reps and things like that as the season goes along.
Yeah, Tony Martin's absolutely one of the guys that I have wanted to mention here, and you probably can't make a case for anybody having a better coach since they started playing football on this roster than Tony Martin. I mean, Tim Martin is in a class of herd wide receivers that is really, really small. And it's a who's who of wide receivers. When you start talking about the greatest of the great, he fits into that conversation. He's a herd Hall of Famer for a reason. I mean, the stats, he's a little bit older and a little bit in that earlier to mid SoCon era when the decade, the dynasty of the 90s was getting rolling, right? So for some guys, younger fans, 40 and under, let's say, you might not really know a lot about Tim Martin, but for guys our age and older, he's a household name. He is an absolute household name. So youngster, the legacy player, Tony Martin, I feel is in the same boat with Deuce White. They're gonna have opportunities this year to show that they deserve more playing time as the season goes along.
My next one that I have is local kid Jalen Abercrombie, and we talked about him earlier about the body composition change and everything. But he's a big kid at least with height and everything. 5'11", 176, down from 187. But I feel that he's probably added muscle, like I said, to that. And I think that Gibby is high on him. And I think that he will be one of these guys that you will see early to kind of gauge how can he help us. And it would not shock me for him to get some good production in to make him a guy that will emerge later on in the second half of the year.
So unsurprisingly, you nailed the three guys that I wanted to talk about in the exact order that I wanted to talk about them. Jalen Abercrombie, here's what I think this may be, because if you'll remember, he was a first-team All-State player in a utility position.
Yeah.
So he may be the future Floyd Lacey type. So you might get to see him out of the backfield a little bit early in the season. You might see him on those reverses and things like that, the jet sweeps, also trying to make way in the traditional pass game. Is a very, very interesting prospect, and it doesn't hurt our feelings at all that he's from right down the street and went to Spring Valley High School, because we love it when those guys come and play here in Huntington. And I mean, we've had several over the years that just make the trip right down Route 60 and start to play in the Joan. And he is such a intriguing, exciting prospect to be a redshirt freshman. I don't expect the moon from him this year, but if I start to see some glimpses, then I really start to feel like, oh, okay, so this is your Floyd Lacey type. This is your all-around utility type player on offense. I'm excited to see what Abercrombie gets to do this year. So I'm with you. I think you'll get early opportunities, and just like with Martin and White, those early opportunities will largely dictate what your later season opportunities are.
I have one final wide receiver I want to talk about. And if you ever put together a Hall of Fame for a spring game, it would be Haggerty. Justin Haggerty has dropped touchdowns and multiple touchdowns for, I think, the last three spring games. He's smaller in stature. And let me get his stats back up here. 5'9", 169. But I don't think that is a problem in this offense. I think that is somewhat of an archetype, like you've talked about in this offense. The guy has speed to burn, but he has made a living in the spring game of just showing how electric he is and that he can be absolutely wide open. It's like people just forget about him or they don't see him because he's that good at the separation. And we have not seen that in the regular season games yet, but to me, I think it's worth mentioning him here because of the production that he keeps showing in these practices and in these spring games, that if he can do it there, let's see what he can do in the game. And he might surprise some people.
So let me give you a name of a former player that, as you're running through this synopsis of Haggerty, it's what popped into my mind. A guy from just not that long ago that did not get a ton of rep, but when he came in the game, made big plays. And you know who I'm talking about. It's Stone Scarcelli, right? He would come in and immediately make big plays.
Yeah, and I think that he's probably going to get tagged in this if he's not watching it, because somebody's going to remind him of the nickname that I gave him. One, he absolutely adores. By the way, every time I've talked to him about that, or every time Big Homie is there with him, he goes, Russ, it's the microwave, you know. And Stone is just grinning like a Cheshire cat,
Yeah.
because he enjoyed that nickname. But yeah, that reminds me of him, because if you remember, he would come in and make an acrobatic catch, hands of glue to come down with the ball, no matter how he had to contort to get it. A guy hitting him when he did it, pinned against the helmet, didn't matter. He was coming down with that ball. And yeah, that's a very appropriate analogy.
I mean, Scarcelli might make 6 catches on the year, but 4 of them were SC top 10 plays.
Yeah.
and move the chains in a vital part of the game or something like. And you were right. I mean, it's such a fitting nickname because Marshall could have been stale and stagnant, and they run in Scarcelli, and all of a sudden they heat up again, and he's right back off the field, and then boom, we're down the field. So that's not a bad look. That is not a bad comparison.
Right.
If you've got to get into the game and make your impression through acrobatic, eye-popping catches, then that's what you have to do. And Scarcelli had a good career doing that for the Herd. So much so that we continually talk about him. Continually. All right, let's talk tight ends.
Yeah, I've got 2 here to mention. And the first by far is Tracy Stevens. We got to see him surprisingly last year in the role that he was, not just as a blocker. He came out and showed some really good hands, but now he's gone from 239 to 264. I don't think that you forget how to catch a football. Your hands don't get any worse when you put on some muscle, but what you do have is someone that is going to make a really, really big dent in the running game, but is probably still going to be that guy that you can rely on when you need that first down, when you need that touchdown, the short yardage and everything. Because you remember, he did that very well. And his limited catches that he had last year, and I'm not trying to diminish what he had, but the percentage of them that went for touchdowns and first downs was incredible, like 80%. I mean, when a big catch needed to be made, he made it. And he was also very, very big in the running game. So I look for a lot out of him this year. Would not surprise me to see us in some 2 tight end sets, with the mismatch nightmare playing more of a slot role and Tracy playing more of a traditional tight end role. But you got to be looking for both of them if you're a linebacker, because both of them can catch the ball, in Payne and Stevens.
Dude, you transform your body in that way, put on that type of weight, and you are already a really, really top tier blocker. You're telling me you're turning into basically a road grader now in the run game, and an added weapon in pass pro, which is big, because we talked about hits on CDRW and how do we diminish those. And you don't really think about your tight end becoming a even better blocker as a way to do that. But it seems like that's what Stevens is going to do. And I'm not taking anything away from his pass catching ability or even his athletic prowess. I'm not saying that tongue in cheek, because for a big guy, he can move, right?
He can.
So, but what this tells me is he will not be a focal point for defenses in the pass game nearly as much as Payne, obviously. But what that's going to afford you is a couple of times a season, you're going to be down in the red zone, tight inside the 5, and you're just going to completely forget about Tracy Stevens, and he's going to leak out and make a little in, and he's going to be standing there all alone, ready to get the go-ahead touchdown, just like we saw last year. I mean, this is a really sneaky role that Stevens is staring down the barrel of, to do a lot of dirty work that there is no reward and no thank you. Everybody else is going to be making the big play or the flashy highlight, but it was because you picked up your block, you kept the throwing lane clean, you opened up the running lane, then you're going to be rewarded with that, with a handful of opportunities to sneak in a goal line situation or in a deep red zone opportunity. I don't think that I'm being rude when I say I don't feel like Stephens is going to be streaking down the seam, for those 50, 60-yard seam routes. I could be wrong, but it just feels like with that type of body change, you have pushed all your chips to the middle of the table and being a short game weapon. And you need that. You absolutely need that.
Second tight end I have is Sean Rouse, and it's he is very athletic. We've followed him from when he was a high school signee, right here at Cabell Midland, but was Cabell, right, not Huntington.
Midland, yeah.
Midland, yeah. But he is one of those guys that is just extremely athletic, extremely strong. Had him here on the line for his defensive line, wasn't it?
Maybe. I thought one of those guys was on the line.
Yeah, it was either offensive or defensive line. I just can't remember which. Now, it may have been offensive line, but he made the transfer. He dropped down from 264, got down to 240 something last year. Yeah, and now I really think that this might be one of the things for when Toby is gone next year, that he has that natural progression to step in to be that more threat of the size and speed defensive matchup nightmare. So I would expect for them to have him in a little bit when Toby needs a rest. Definitely, if games get out of hand, you'll see him in and try to work him into this offense so he can be that next guy to step in.
Yeah, I also think that Rouse will accompany Payne in a 2 tight end set, so you have 2 receiving tight ends playing on the field at the same time. But I like him in this spot as well. He seems like the type of player where the role will be increased this year. He will be asked to do something. He will be asked to contribute in the pass game in spots, especially if, like you say, Toby gets dinged up for a game or two or God forbid, worse. But similar build, an inch shorter, but 10 pounds heavier, strong as an ox. So you like him in the block game. You're not going to see anything fall off from the responsibility of tight ends in the blocking scheme. He's a great all-around tight end. Doesn't do anything super great, but does everything really good. And I think it's an opportunity here to start to separate his skill set on the field, become a better pass catcher, become a better downfield blocker, and those type of things. But I've been anxious to see how he would fit into the offense for a couple of years since last year. And now it looks like he settled into the role of the hybrid type, more pass catching tight end of the future. Okay.
That's all I have.
That's more than I had, but I enjoyed being able to talk about all these dudes. Let's talk some strengths and weaknesses, I suppose.
Yeah, and to reflect me saying this is my number one unit, I have 5 strengths and only 2 weaknesses. Wow. So, yeah.
You're going to be starting and ending and starting again, but I've got 3 and 3, but I'm sure I'll be able to feed off of some of the things that you don't have. So give me your number 1.
Number 1 is returning production. Norton and Tamariz came on strong later in the year and have developed good chemistry with CDRW. They are both poised to improve on last year's numbers.
Yeah, I would echo that. It should have landed in my top 3, but I think I was thinking more as a whole in the group, But you cannot deny the returning production here. I mean, if Floyd was a big loss. But, man, having everybody else back sure does help. Your top 2 wide receivers after that and your who's 2 of those guys are first-team All-SBC selections in the preseason, and it wouldn't surprise me if all 3 of them land on a All-SBC team at the end of the year. So, yeah, I would echo that. Go ahead and give me number 2, though.
Yeah, and just to pile on to that, I just really think the chemistry that they have with Toby and Norton and Tamarez, it's so much more valuable than bringing in somebody new that you have to establish that they're going to have it going already in. Number two is the influx of talent. So one was the returning production, two's the influx of talent. Culliver, Hamilton, Sweeney, and McLaurin are some big time additions to the room and provide instant home run threats.
So this speaks to what my actual number one strength is. You talked about returning production. You talk about bolstering through the portal. It's my number one is elite depth. This is absolutely elite depth on this team, and really, I would venture to say in this conference, Marshall can legitimately deploy 6 to 8 receiving threats without a dramatic drop off. That is elite depth. We haven't been able to talk about that in any capacity for any position group in a very, very long time, if ever, since we've been doing this show. But I mean, as general fans, when's the last time you and I have just been able to have a conversation about depth like this?
Man, if I had to guess, it would maybe be going into the 2024 season for defensive line.
Maybe. Yeah. Because they were pretty stacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And still you had some big time names that left in 2023, for us to do that. But anyway, that's what leaps out to me for getting this depth would probably be back to then when we were talking about everybody that was going to have such big years on the defensive line in 2024.
Wow. Yeah. How about number 3?
All caps, 2 periods, Toby Payne. The mismatch nightmare coming back for a final season is huge. The league knows it. Everyone knows it. Too fast for the linebackers, too strong for the DBs. Get him the rock.
I feel like an a-hole for not giving him his own strength, and I'm gonna stamp that as well. I should have had 4 strengths, and one of them should have been Toby freaking Payne, the campus legend, one of the all-time great tight ends. Even if the numbers don't say that, your eyes tell you that he's been one of the great weapons, one of the great tight ends that we've had all time, but easily over the last decade. So, man, what a great strength. I can't believe I didn't mean to do you that way, man. That's my bad. That's totally my bad. How about, well, let me give you my actual. My number 2 overall strength is team speed and versatility. Outside size, slot quickness, vertical speed, return game ability, and a premier tight end that all create that true pick your poison passing attack. Man, I haven't seen it. I can't remember seeing anything like it in a really long time from a receiving group.
My number 4 is slot backs and short game playmakers. XTB and White should thrive, and I look for them to be heavily featured in our passing game. But they're not the only ones. We mentioned those other guys that could step right in that slot role.
I don't think I can add anything to that. I mean, you're right. So I'm just going to go straight on to my number 3 strength, and it speaks to what you said about returning production, but to me, it's just, you mentioned it a little bit at the end when you talked about the chemistry. That's the angle that I have. It's the proven core plus the QB plus the system. That's the other additive for me. Norton and Payne and Tamarez, known producers. They operate with their preferred quarterback, you would like to think at this point. I mean, he's the one that returned and all the familiarity, but it's the evolution of all of these guys individually and the evolution of their games and skill sets, how those relate together, then how they are all folded inside of this offense that Rod Smith brings to the table. Man, that core plus quarterback plus system is, I mean, I can't talk about it enough. I think it's that big of a strength that we have been talking about this offense as a run first, run heavy offense. And man, the more you talk about the receiving aspect of the game, it makes you feel like this might be a pass first type of offense. But
Yeah.
I don't know. We shall see.
CDRW said that down at Sunbelt Media Days. He said that he had a goal that last year he showed his legs more than his arm, and this year he wanted to show his arm. And that he even said he was looking at the Sunbelt single season record for passing. It was 4,300 yards or something like that. If we're throwing for 4,300 yards, we are going to definitely be a pass first team. And I really think that we might see that.
That's a big number. That's a
It's
big number.
huge.
Yeah. So what's the last one you got?
All right, number 5 for me. I had to bite my tongue earlier so I didn't give all this away when we were talking about him. And it's Tracy Stevens. The big man got bigger, and he has some terrific hands, like we were talking about. He is a goal line superstar in the making. You started talking about that short yardage and being inside the 5 or in the red zone and all that. That's what it is. And I don't want to do the guy wrong and compare him to a touchdown machine in Gator Hoskins, but Gator was always open and definitely in the red zone. There would not be anybody within 10 yards of that guy. It was the easiest pitch and catch you could ever do. And if they are forgetting about Tracy Stevens because he is 264 and has only doze blocked somebody all the way down the field and he gets down to the red zone, I could see him being wide open right there with those big hands and making the touchdown catches with ease because the defenses are paying attention to all the other people.
Yeah. Now look, how my mind works a lot. When you start talking about things, I start going back and thinking about former players and former plays and this, that, and the other. And then immediately we were talking about him before and the production numbers not being huge and, he might not even be a 10 reception guy on the year.
Mm-hmm.
But who has the biggest tight end catch from a guy who was a non-factor throughout the entire season to win
Pinkerton.
a huge game for Marshall?
Pinkerton.
That's right. Eric Pinkerton in the 99 MAC championship game with the clutch, 3-yard tight end out to win the game?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many Herd fans have watched that play 100 times?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them have.
That might have been his only catch on the year.
I think he had 3 that season. I think, or maybe it wasn't a big number. It was either 3 that season or 3 in the career or something like that. And one of them was that. I swear it was an oddball stat, man. It was like 3 catches for 3 yards and a touchdown or something. But that's where my mind goes. I start thinking about these type of players that, while good players, weren't stat stuffers, but made clutch plays that live forever because they won games. I know you're looking at that, and you're gonna get it.
No, they don't say, but I'm reading the article and everything, and I had Pinkerton, who had 2 catches for 13 yards this season, made his first career touchdown reception, among the more memorable plays in Herd history. What I had forgotten was how many home runs as a first baseman that he had.
Yeah. So let's talk about some concerns. There are always going to be some. Evidently, I have more than you, but I guess I should go first. Because this is not really a receiving core concern per se. My number one overall concern is the health of quarterback 1. Are you going to be able to keep CDRW healthy for an entire season? Is he going to be able to be as close to 100% as he possibly can be for the entire season? That's the largest threat to this room, in my opinion. It's him missing significant time. The ceiling at that point changes immediately without him. And it's not a knock on the other guys in the offense or in the quarterback room.
No.
It's just how good he is, number one. Number two, how good they are all together.
Chemistry of it, yeah.
Yeah, that's my number one overall concern.
That's huge and valid because someone has to get them the ball as a receiver. It's different than when you're a running back and anybody can just hand it off to you. Even then, the offense changes, after that when your QB1 goes down. But when you have that kind of chemistry, and we've already talked about how the ball comes out differently from each person, but think of Cato and Schuler and the chemistry that they had. And I don't think anybody's going to be on that level for a long time. You know, if Cato was out of the game, Schuler is still a very good receiver. He's nowhere near as good as he is with Cato than without him because of that chemistry that they have.
Mhm.
They always knew where each other were, always knew if I go here, he's going to find me. You're not going to have that when you have a QB change. So that's a very, very valid point.
Yeah. Thank you. What's your number one?
My number one is, are there enough receptions to go around? CDRW says he wants to break the SBC single season passing yards record. So we expect there to be a lot of passes slung around, but we have a bunch of guys that will be looking for the rock. Can we keep them all going? I don't mean that you're going to have somebody sulking on the sideline. I mean that if you've got a hot hand, but these other guys are very capable too, who do you feed? You know, does somebody, you know, because they start getting less targets, it just disrupts their flow. So if we're going to be passing this much and we have this many people, we're not talking about Watson, Davis, and Marriott, where they're going to be getting 90% of the receptions. We're talking about we could see 8 wide receivers splitting the receptions. Can we keep those hot hands hot?
So also a very valid point, right? But and I'm always in the camp. I'd say 99% of the time I'm in the camp of if a guy's hot, you keep feeding him. You make the defense prove they can stop the guy before you go away from the guy. You don't derail a hot offense on your own accord. So I'm always kind of on record as feeling that way. But man, we've talked about 6, 7, 8, 9 guys that we expect to be, you know, contributors to this team in this offense. That's a lot of passes to spread around. Inevitably, there are going to be a handful of them that have more targets, more yards, and more receptions than everybody else. But everybody that gets in that game is looking to catch a football. You don't go into the game thinking, all right, I'm a decoy here. I don't really care if they throw me the ball. You want your opportunity. And that's a very, very real thing. And not that I'm saying this about any one of our guys, but historically, the wide receiver position, probably more than any other position, has been known as like prima donna types. They have egos and they want fed. And you can look throughout the decades of college ball and pro ball. And again, I'm not saying this about any of our guys, but they all want the damn football. And if you're a wide receiver and you don't want the football, you're playing the wrong position, right? Just go be a DB, right? So that's a very, 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 very valid point. My number 2 concern is self-inflicted mistakes, drops and penalties, particularly. We saw how many explosive plays get called back last year, not necessarily on a penalty of a receiver, just on a penalty, right? So those plays happened, but they didn't count. So we saw a lot of plays take points off the board, big plays get called back, and those are things that have kind of been a thorn in the side of Marshall for a long time. This is not a Tony Gibson team thing. This is just how it has been for a while. And they pop their ugly head up at seemingly the worst freaking time. So Marshall showed the ability all season long to score and make big plays, but too many of those didn't get to stay. And how many times we got to go back and talk about 11 points being the difference between 4 more wins? And those are the type of things that, well, that's the difference between a 5-win team and a 9-win team sometimes, is penalty or plays that you made but don't get to stand. What else you got for me?
My second and final one is separation. Last year, that was a huge problem. And so far this season, it's just on paper. So can our wide receivers get separation and allow CDRW to hit open receivers instead of having to tuck it for a run? It remains to be seen. And I think that with the people that we brought in, with the routes that I've seen them run on video, with the speed that we've seen on paper, I think that they should be able to get that separation. But I also thought that last year coming in, and we did not. We had Lacey, and then there was a huge drop-off on separation until much later on in the year. Now, we also had a QB change. You know, Del Rio Wilson didn't really take over until the conference slate hit. So I felt like that got better as the season went along, but it was still a huge concern even late in the season. And right now, again, it has not happened because it's only on paper.
Yeah, that's true. With that, I will say my number 3 overall concern is that newcomer and underclassmen youngster production must become a real thing. 3 known entities do not a feared passing attack make. You can't rely on Norton, Tamarez, and Payne. Even though you're throwing XTB in there, he's still got to elevate game to a certain degree to be the 4th player in that top 4 returning guys type thing. At least 3 of these newcomers and youngsters have got to establish themselves not just as threats, as weekly threats. They have to show up each and every week. You can't be, well, I show up and play a good game once every month or once a month or whatever. You're going to need 6 to 7 guys showing up, proving that we can all make plays every single game in order for everything that we've been talking about to truly hold water. You can't say you're a pick your poison offense if you got 3 guys. Well, I mean, if you can nullify 2 of them, then you're kind of down to your last sip of poison, and we want 6, 7, 8, 9 guys keeping in defense off kilter, not knowing who to key on, who's going to have the hot hand that week. That's a good problem to have, but none of it happens if these newcomers and youngsters don't step up and put something on the field when the whistle blows. Let me ask you something that we haven't really talked about in any of these position groups yet. And I know you've got something like you could do this without a problem. What do you think success looks like to you for this group? I mean, what has to happen for you to go, wow, they lived up to the hype?
I'm going to be so bold to say 1,000 more yards than last year.
And what was that number? 24, almost 2,500. Okay.
Yeah. And there's going to be some people watching and listening to this go, man, it's too much. It's a lot. Well, it is. We're talking about freaking 8 deep and, a very good top 2 receiving tandem on the tight end side, plus the wide receiver depth that we have. And we got a quarterback saying that he wants to break the 4,300 mark. I think that they are going to have to do at least 1,000 more and be up around that mid 3,000 mark, the 3,500 mark, for me to say, yes, this was a success. Now, look, we could go 10-2 or 11-1 and only throw for 1,000 yards, and I'd be the happiest man on the face of the planet. I would not care. I would not. I don't care if we put up 50 yards of offense and we win it with defense and special teams every week. Win is above everything. But to see a success for this particular room, I think that it's got to be, you're going to have somebody with the catches in the 60s, somebody, with pushing 850 to 1,000 yards, somewhere around there. And you're going to just have to see a lot of production and really 3,500 yards, something like that, to see success. We can be very successful without that, but that's just from a stat standpoint, that's just what leaps out to me.
So the reason I asked you that question is because I got to thinking about this stuff and I thought, what would that look like for me? Of course, like you said, wins is everything. It doesn't matter. As long as if you're winning games, that's all that matters. That's success. Then they lived up to the hype because you went from 5 wins to 10 wins or whatever.
Right.
But you talk about adding 1,000 yards of production. That only gets you to 3,500 yards. Your quarterback wants to do 4,300 yards. Now think about how much you have to increase that production. I didn't go quite that high, but we were in the same general area. I thought, you know what? You throw on another 700 yards passing, you're up around that 3,200 mark. That's a really successful season, man, because you're pushing close to 300 yards passing. You're probably at 275-ish range. You went for 18 total passing touchdowns last year. I mean, you don't have to double that up, but you got to bump it up pretty considerably. I mean, you might want to be pushing that 30, that 27 to 30 window there to really have a vaunted passing attack. And then Marshall's just historically been a championship team when they have a really good pass attack.
Oh, yeah.
When they are a top team or a top 2 team in the league, you can literally draw a line and say, all right, this data point equals that data point. When they're a top 1, 2 passing team in a league, chances are they've won a championship that year. Now, yeah, you can go back to the Sun Belt Championship and go, there's no way we were a top 2 passing team in the league. Yeah, you're right. We probably weren't. That's an outlier. They were playing hellacious defense, and they were awesome, and they were able to make plays when they needed to make plays. But think about MAC era. Think about Conference USA era. They had great passing teams to go along with really good defenses as well. So that's a line you can draw, and it doesn't mean everything, but it's certainly history on your side when you can look at that. I think another couple of points that make me think they lived up to the hype are things like, are you going up and winning a vast majority of those 50-50 balls? Are you coming down with the football, right? Did your field awareness and communication notch up versus a year ago? Is your spacing better? Is your sideline awareness better? Did you make better route adjustments? Just did your football IQ go up as a unit? And of course, I mentioned it just before, at least 5, but ideally 6 to 8 of these guys become legitimate game plan concerns for opposing defenses. I think all those things kind of add up to an increased production level, but I can't just look at you and say, you know what, they need to pass for 4,000 yards and they need to have 40 touchdowns, and that's how they live up to the hype, because I just don't think that's a fair thing to say.
Yeah.
So let's do the Thundercast 5. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right. Who's your biggest loss from the receiving core from a year ago?
It's obviously Floyd Lacey.
Yeah, it's got to be Floyd. Now let's get into the ones that really, really are splitting hairs. Who are you most excited to watch this year?
It's Adrian Norton with a full season of chemistry with CDRW and taking that next step. And if he did what he did, say, the last half of the season and extrapolate that over a full season, I think that we're going to see a really special season out of him.
This is where I am being a little selfish. I'm excited to see the campus legend this year. Toby Payne, one final hurrah for the Herd. I mean, so underutilized for so many years. I don't think that we will see him the way that a lot of us want to just see him, but I'm really excited to see 81 back on the field. I really, really am, man. That's just, my heart tells me that's who I want to see, the local guy, the Herd legend, the campus legend. I want to see him one more go around. And I would really like to see him be able to finish the business that they want to finish this year and obviously hoist the Sun Belt Championship. Who's your breakout player this year?
It's XTB. I think that we only saw him really get that one drive down at Georgia to where he got to, shine a little bit in the receiving game. Everything else was from a kick return standpoint, but you could see the explosiveness, you could see the vision, and you could see what he could really do in the open field. I think that it was no coincidence that we saw a heavy dose of him in the opening drive of the spring game. Coach Gibson, when he was on the show, even kind of alluded to that and said a little bit of a preview of what you may see out of XTB. So if they're getting him the ball 8 times a game or something, he's naturally going to have to break out, in my opinion.
A good pick. I don't know, man. I had another tie here because it's 2 guys that I feel like have similar game styles, have similar skill sets. One has done it in a uniform for the Herd. One has not. It's DeAndre Tamarez and Christian Hamilton. I think both those guys are very similar in what they do, and both of them have the potential to break out. And I feel like Tamarez has a slightly larger ability to do it because of the attention that Norton is going to continually receive, that Payne is going to continually receive, that's going to afford him the opportunity at more receptions, at easier, softer coverages because there's more attention over here. Hamilton, I feel, can do it because he just hasn't done it in the uniform before for us, and flashed for me in the spring game, and I thought it looked really good, and I thought, hey man, this could be a guy that like turns fan base on its ear, because they're like, wow, like electricity, nice. So two guys, but for two different reasons. When it's all said and done, who's your breakout player, or who's your MVP?
It's Toby Payne. And I truly believe that we're going to see him hit pay dirt a lot more this season. Because, one, I think that it's not just looking for him in the red zone. I think it's really going to be him with a mismatch where you just see him streaking down the field because his guy just couldn't keep up with him. You know, they had a linebacker on him, and he did a fake going across the middle, went to the outside, he's gone, that sort of thing.
My MVP this year, I believe, is going to be Adrian Norton, the wide receiver one, hands down right now. All SBC selection, proven playmaker, reliable, and makes those tough catches. I mean, he'll squirrel away from a defender and make that effort to get into the end zone. I mean, gritty and tough, and also flashy with a little bit of nuance. I mean, the guy's got it all. And I think he's getting all this hype for a reason. You know, I mean, it's I just don't feel like it's normal per se to have a guy returning with only 350 yards of receiving and then going, yeah, he's a first team all SBC selection. He's getting a lot of hype for a lot of the reason, and I think he's going to go out and produce and become one of the next really great wide receivers for the Herd this year. Let's talk sleeper. This is a good one. Who's your sleeper?
It's Owen Sweeney for me. And I think that what we saw him do at VMI, be that home run hitter, the big chunk play, I think that will light up scoreboards and light up people's minds of, whoa, didn't expect that, 6 to 8 touchdowns out of this guy that wasn't a starter, that sort of thing. I truly believe that he has that sleeper ability to be that big, tall guy, the 50-50 balls, the streaking down the sideline type thing that we saw him do at VMI.
Hold on to your hat, man. My sleeper this year is Owen Sweeney as well. Tall outside threat, over 700 yards of production with 8 touches at VMI. I mean, dude, almost nobody outside of you and I is talking about him.
Mm-hmm.
They are all talking about Norton and Payne and Tamarez for good reason. You know, those guys deserve to be talked about, and very few people are talking about as many wide receivers as we are right now. Owen Sweeney is going to creep up and do like just boom, I'm on the radar. I'm your over-the-top threat. I'm your outside threat, like the guy that we've been clamoring for. You know, I think back to just a few years ago, we had a really, really good outside threat wide receiver, Corey Gamage. Great outside threat, big-bodied, big and tall, very athletic. And I feel like Owen Sweeney is the next great outside threat for the Herd, and nobody is talking about him. Final verdict, Russ, is
let me tell you a little bit about Sweeney to remind people after he was signed here. I'm just going to break down. This is only his long for every game. So his longest reception for every game. First game, 75 yards for a touchdown. Next game, 52 yards for a touchdown. Next game, his long was of 27, but he had 72 yards and 2 touchdowns. Next game after that, his long was 75 for a touchdown. He had 104 for 106 and 2 touchdowns. 6 touchdowns in his first 4 collegiate games with 2 75-yard touchdowns and 1 52-yard touchdown. Later on in the year, he had 55, he had 38, he had 24, he had 15. And his best game was 13 catches, 208 yards for 1 touchdown, a 55-yarder. The guy just has home run threat all over him. And again, this was from your wide receiver 2 for all intents and purposes.
Mm-hmm. So now, knowing that, final verdict, is this unit better in 26 than it was in 2025?
A resounding yes.
Resound. Yeah, I kind of felt that coming. Yes, it's a resounding yes. What? This room has the ability and responsibility to create havoc, game in and game out. All the cohesion, all the returning production, all the newcomers that bolster this unit, the offense, the whole nine. Yes, it's better, top to bottom, than it was a year ago. And that's lending a huge tip of the cap to Floyd Lacey and everything that he meant to this 2025 passing game. The ranking for this unit is justified. Now, living up to the hype is a whole nother animal. But yes, this is better in 2026 than it is in 2025. Russ, how about any final words before we get out of this monstrous hour and a half long position group breakdown episode brought to you by Secure Construction Company?
I've said it all about the stuff on the field. I just want to thank Secure Construction yet again to be our presenting sponsor of this series. Anyone watching or listening, we talked 6 weeks about roofing. We've now talked the last 2 about secure bathrooms. We all know someone that needs a grab bar. We all know someone that needs a little more help designing their bathroom to make it safer to prevent those slips and falls. Make sure your bathroom gets secure. Call them at Secure Construction.
Now with that, take us out of here.
Yes, whether you see us at the Jack, whether you see us at the Vet, whether you see us at the Cam, no matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go Herd.
Go Herd. It is the Thundercast comeback next week because we are talking defensive backs, baby. It's the Thundercast. We'll see you later.